I'm Ty, or Titanium, Rapid Pichu, Razor Teeth, or whatever, and these are my cousins. I am a big fan of video games, and I have been ever since I was about 3 or 4. For the past 20 years or so, I have been exposed to many games of many different genres. Growing up, a lot of my cousins, both older and younger, have exposed me to some of my favorite video games and franchises over the years. I have a lot of cousins on both sides of my family, and they're all like brothers to me. In this video series, I will be going over most, if not all, of the games I can recall playing/owning over the years. This will be a big project that will span over multiple videos, about 15 to be exact. In each video, I will go over the games that I have the best memories with in that occurring era in my life. This series will be sorted by school grade, starting off with before I was even in school, to after I graduated from high school, and all of the grades in between. And along the way, I will have some of those cousins come through and have them talk about some of the games that we played together growing up. This is Growing Up with Games. I was born on January 28th, 2000. I was born and grew up in Massachusetts. I basically lived here my whole life. As a baby growing into a toddler, I can't recall being that fascinated by video games. I would see people play them all the time, like my cousins and uncles. But I was more concerned with wanting to watch SpongeBob and Noggin. That's Nick Jr. nowadays to those born after the mid-2000s. I have a lot of cousins. For reference, out of all of my maternal grandparents' grandkids, I am the 4th oldest out of 16. And out of all of my paternal grandparents' grandkids, I am the 3rd oldest out of 22. Again, I don't recall being super interested in video games at a young age, but I can say without a doubt that I owe my first major exposure to video games to my older cousin from my dad's side, Tiandro. Being born in the mid to late 90s, T was blessed with the opportunity to experience a Nintendo 64 childhood. I remember him having a whole cardboard box full of N64 cartridges, and 4 controllers for people to use whenever they came over. Now, at this point in time, I'm probably like 3 or 4 years old, so it's probably 2003 or some shit. Next-gen consoles are already out, but either we weren't aware of that or we just didn't care, because we were having too much fun on the N64. Do you know where you got your N64 in the games?
I don't, honestly. I don't have a single idea.
You were just born with them?
Apparently, yeah, that shit came out of the womb with me.
Now, another thing T was very into growing up was Pokemon. I vividly remember him watching a lot of Pokemon episodes through VHS tapes. He had toys, cards, games, merch, everything you could imagine a 90s kid having when it came to Pokemon. Funnily enough though, even as a little kid, I did not care for Pokemon whatsoever. I have a feeling I wasn't into a lot of anime type things as a kid, so the only thing Pokemon had going for it in my eyes were the toys. Because no matter what, if you're a little boy, you like toys. However, with all of that being said, the very first game I have memories playing was actually Pokemon Stadium. Pokemon Stadium is a Pokemon game that was released on April 30th, 1999 in Japan, and February 29th, 2000 for North America. Which means this game came out a month after I was born. Funny how that works. The main selling point of the game is that you can transfer Pokemon from the first generation Pokemon games into Stadium and battle with them in 3D on the big screen. Essentially, the game is just Pokemon battles, something I was not into at all as a kid. I mean, some Pokemon looked funny and cool to me as a kid, like Mr. Mime, Charizard, and of course Pikachu. But for a long time, I only liked Pokemon for the Pokemon. I didn't care about battling, trading, the trading card game. I didn't care about any of that shit. So you were born like 97, right?
Yes, sir.
That was like, well, Pokemon came out a year later, in America at least. And you were a baby, so obviously I assume you didn't fucking get into it until you were like, at least like 3, minimum 4.
What do you mean? Doesn't every newborn child start playing Game Boy?
I mean, you never know. But do you have any like recollection of like, do you know what Pokemania is?
Pokemania?
That's basically just like when Pokemon was like at its peak and like that shit was just like everywhere. It was just like super popular, like late 90s, early 2000s.
Probably not. I mean, like, I was never, like, up to date on anything. Everything Pokemon that I had, like, I just kind of, like, probably just came across it somehow. My mom probably just bought me games because she knew I was into Pokemon. I didn't know, like, I didn't have any, like, books or anything. I didn't know any Pokemon news.
Gotcha.
That's what happens when you're not broke, but a step above.
The creatures themselves were the only interesting things to me. Even in the anime, the only thing that caught my eye was fucking Pikachu. which is kind of the point of him being the mascot, a character that girls will think is cute and boys will think is cool. Ash, Misty, and Brock were fine, but yeah, Pokemon just wasn't doing it for me. At least for now. But no, the main reason why this game left a big impact on me was, funnily enough, the Kids Club. The Kids Club is a mode in the game where you can mess around with friends and play some good old-fashioned minigames. This is legitimately the only fun I got out of this game. Like, deadass. Looking back on it now, it's kinda crazy, because nowadays I could probably play each minigame once and then go on with my life. There isn't that much substance to these minigames. But no, as a kid I remember playing these minigames non-stop with Tiandro and some other cousins and friends of his. I remember everyone else always wanted to battle and shit, and I would always whine because the minigames were the only thing I cared about. They really tried to get me to battle and to learn how to play actual Pokemon, but I was not having it. So, I did not like battling at all. I only played that game exclusively for the minigames, the like 9 minigames that had no substance to them, like at all, but I didn't care because I was like 4. I remember there's one time, you and somebody tried getting me to a battle, and you're like, oh, I'll help you, I'll show you like what to do.
No. I love where this is going already.
Yeah. So then I'd be like, alright, like make me win, like show me what to do, because I don't understand any of this shit. Because that's like, you can't really play Pokemon unless you know how to read, and there's no fucking way I know how to read back then. So I'm like, alright, pick the move that like helps me win. And we were talking about this the other day, that there was an animation in the game that like, you guys thought was like the funniest shit in the world. And you told me it might have been like Mr. Mime's like fucking...
No, it 100% was. Even, it's funny, even my mom, if you ask her about it, she'll tell you she remembers me doing that, like, as a kid. Like outside of playing the game. Like, I'd be around the house fucking... So I thought it was just the funniest shit in the universe.
But yeah, assuming it was Mr. Mime, I think you kept on doing, like... I don't even know if the move did anything, but it had that animation, and you guys... kept on doing it, and I'd be like, you guys would like be laughing at me, and I'm like crying. I'm like, no, dude, like just help me win. Like this is why I don't like battling. Please, and you're like, all right, for real this time, and you just keep doing it.
Because back then we didn't have morals. It was just like, all right, we're gonna tell them that we're gonna help them, but we're actually gonna make them lose on purpose so we can win.
Yeah, or maybe it was just I'm pretty sure it was just to fuck with me. It was just like a teasing thing.
We were assholes.
The minigames are one of the most nostalgic memories I have with literally anything at this early stage in my life. Clefairy Says specifically always comes into my head when thinking about this mode, even though there's no way I could make past like round 2 as a kid. The Sanctuary one was oddly enough one of the ones I was better at. I rarely ever won minigames over my cousins, but this one was one of the few I could do well at least against the computers. So you had a red N64 controller, I remember that, like, perfectly.
I remember that.
I think you had a red one, and then you had like 3 like gray ones or 3 shitty ones, like the normal ones, I don't remember.
I think I had 2 gray ones, and I think I definitely had the purple one that was like you could see the inside.
Yeah.
That one was my favorite one.
But I always wanted to use the red one because I'm like, oh, this is what my big cousin uses. I want to be like him, and you would never let me use it ever. But there was this one time I remember. I wonder if you remember this or not. My grandmother picked me up. My mom said she picked me up from your house. And I was like, wait, let me do one more minigame. And it was by myself, like you weren't playing. And I used your controller. And you were like, alright, whatever. And I did the Sandshrew one. And I did it like perfectly. And I think that was like the first memory I have of like winning a minigame. I was like, so from that point on, I was like, oh, this nigga got the fucking good controller. That's why I can never win.
Yeah, that's the modded controller.
Yeah, that's what I thought in my head. Or I think at the time I could just be making shit up, but all the other controllers also felt kind of like cheap in a way, and that one felt like perfect. So I was like, oh no, I need this. But
it could have either been that they were cheap, or it could have been, I probably pressed the L and R so many times the buttons wore out.
Right.
I mean, it was late 90s, early 2000s. Shit was all cheap back then.
The Ekans one, I have more memories about seeing the game than actually playing it. Ekans itself being a pretty iconic Pokemon for me due to this minigame alone. I honestly didn't give a shit about the Magikarp one. It might honestly be the only one I have no recollection of playing when I was younger. This Harding one I didn't really understand at all as a kid, but now it's definitely one of my favorites. The Rattata one was always one I liked, but was never good at. The Drowsy one was weird to me when I was younger, but was definitely one of my cousin's favorites. The Licky Tongue one was also pretty iconic, but also just funny due to the Japanese guy yelling in the background. And finally, the Electric Mashing one, which I was definitely dog shit at as a kid, but was still cool to me because Pikachu was in it, and Voltorb was cool to me too. It also low-key probably taught me how to play a game without having to look at the controller, since you have to mash the corresponding button with the color. Or maybe that just made me look at the controller more. I don't know. So do you have a favorite minigame? Do you have like a game that you remember being your favorite like as a kid and like even now?
Now it's definitely the drowsy one. There's no doubt in my head. I'm sure you saw when you played. Yeah. Back then, I don't know. It might have been the Rattata one, like the hurdle jumps.
Dude, I talked about it. I was like, oh, this was like always one of my favorites as a kid, even though I wasn't that good at it, but I wanted to be good at it like so bad. I don't know what it was about it.
Actually, no. My favorite back then was the hardened one with the rocks that fall. That I don't know what it was. That game was. I mean, yeah, that minigame was just. I don't know. It was the shit for me.
I feel like if everyone who's playing that is like immaculate at it, it like becomes like intense.
Oh yeah, it'd be like me and you versus like when we went on the drowsy, like how we just kept going.
We just kept going.
Yeah, and back then obviously it's not a Switch, so there was no like input lag and no internet connection like that. So if I press A, you know it's gonna A.
Yeah, like instant, like just like that. I remember liking the Clefairy one as a kid, like the concept of it. Obviously, I was shit at it. Like, there's no way I made it past like round 2 as a kid, but I always thought it was like funny. Like, I don't know. When I think of Stadium and like nostalgia, like the Clefairy thing comes into my head like immediately.
Yeah. That game was hard. I always played everything on the easiest difficulty, but it was still fun. I guess I thought it was funny that like if you get it wrong, teacher hits you in the head with a hammer.
Now that I'm older, I can appreciate this game for way more than just the mini-games. But at the same time, I wouldn't say this game is super good or anything. It's a solid game, but the battles just get very repetitive over time. At the time though, this game was probably insane for a kid, as if you had access to the transfer pack and the Game Boy games, you could do everything this game has to offer. Still not super interesting, but kids don't care. They can transfer their Pokemon to the damn TV. And kids also probably didn't care that the game is just 15 hours of battles. They probably ate that shit up. Did you ever connect your Gen 1 games to Stadium at all? Did you ever have the transfer pack?
No, actually, I never had the Gen 1 games. My first game was Gold.
Interesting. And I assume the same goes for Stadium too, then you never transferred?
No, I didn't, well, because I didn't have the game pack.
Yeah.
Which, you know what, that means I probably did get that as a hand-me-down, because didn't the game pack come with the N64?
I think it came with Stadium. Maybe it did. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's like 23 years ago. We're talking.
I can personally do it without the bullshit Gen 1 mechanics and the broken-ass psychic types and the dumbass RNG. But for what this game is, it was a fun time as a kid and a cool game to experience even now as an adult. Now, Pokemon Stadium is the first game I can remember playing, but there's another game I remember playing a lot on the N64, and if I got so much mileage out of the Kids Club and Stadium, then why wouldn't I like Mario Party? Mario Party is another N64 classic. It is obviously the epitome of a party game. For those who have never played a Mario Party game, it's basically a board game that ends every turn with a minigame. Whoever wins the minigame is rewarded with coins, which can then be used to buy stars. Whoever has the most stars at the end of the game wins. And that's the short version. So many other random things and events can happen during a game of Mario Party that I would be here all day if I explained all of them. This game was my introduction to Mario as a character, which is weird because most people tend to start with an actual Mario game. I remember as a kid that I didn't like the roster for this game at all. I used to play Wario because his overalls were purple and that was my favorite color at the time, before realizing it was a girl color. Tiandra would play Donkey Kong every time, and he still does to this day. And who could forget the rumors of having Peach as a computer player? Everyone would say that she was the best AI and always made the smartest decisions. To this day, I don't know whether that's cap or not, but even when I would watch videos on YouTube, people would say the same thing people said to me as a kid, so who knows. A very specific and weird memory I have with this game is going into my uncle's room when he wasn't home, and wanting to play his N64 with Mario Party so bad. My mom told me no, and I couldn't bring myself to go against my mother's wishes. All I did was turn the console on and watch the opening cutscene. And that's all I did, since I technically wasn't playing the game. It was the only time I watched the cutscene in full as a kid, because who wants to sit there for 2 minutes and watch this shit? The minigames that stood out to me the most were Crazy Cutter, Facelift, Skateboard Scamper. Box Mountain Mayhem specifically was one I remember liking a lot for some reason. Platform Peril, Bowl Over, Piranha's Pursuit, Bobsled Run, and Handcar Havoc. I also don't remember how anybody was supposed to beat Limbo Dance at all, as well as not being able to follow the shell game at all. I remember T showing me the trick to using my eyes to follow the correct shell. That shit looked impossible when I was younger. And who could forget the numerous stick rotating games? My whole life I rotated my sticks like this, but everyone else did it like this. I didn't really get it, but it was the better method apparently. And as many know, Nintendo did get sued for this, as many people got blisters on their hands for playing the game like this. Were you aware that at the time of that game, like when it came out, Nintendo actually got sued because of the...
Because of what?
Because people would do this, and they would get like blisters on like their hand and shit.
Nobody told me. I never got blisters. People must have been like really forced.
Yeah. But I think they always meant for people to do it like this, but no one, if they want to win, they're not going to do that. So
yeah, especially as a kid, I have a tiny hand. My thumb probably didn't even reach enough to rotate it.
So they actually had to send out gloves to everybody who bought the game, like at a certain point. Like little gloves to play this thing.
I wish I got gloves. Nobody told me.
But at the end of the day, my two favorite mini games for this game will always be Shy Guy Says and Mushroom Mix-Up. Fucking fire. Now that I'm older and I've played an extensive amount of this game, maybe too much, honestly, I can finally put my bias away and say, this is probably the worst traditional Mario Party game. A lot of the minigames are kind of fixed, and some just suck and are boring. There are only a few boards I enjoy playing on, and if I'm playing any Mario Party game with friends or family, this is the one they want to play the least. I went on to play almost every other Mario Party throughout the years, and who knows, maybe we'll talk about some of those later. But this one will always have a special place in my heart for introducing me to Mario, and the fun of multiplayer games as a whole. So as I said before, Tiandro had a bunch of N64 games in a box. I don't really think he had many single-player games, like no games that I just watched him play. It was always us playing together for the most part. I know he had Donkey Kong 64, but all I remember from that was being appalled that a game like that had the hell word in it.
He may move slow, he can't jump high, but this cause one hell of a guy.
Most people who have played an N64 will tell you that it excelled at multiplayer experiences. From GoldenEye to Diddy Kong Racing, there was something for pretty much everyone. What are some other notable N64 games you had that you liked that I probably don't give a shit about? I know there's GoldenEye and Donkey Kong 64.
Those are the first two that came to my head. I remember GoldenEye, I didn't know how the fuck to play it. Because even now, when I play it on the Switch, that game's hard as hell.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Older games were not fun. They were not easy.
Right.
Donkey Kong 64, I remember there's the island that you start on where, it's all safe and shit. There's the occasional the beaver enemies or whatever, maybe the bees. But I remember you could swim out and go to the crocodile base, whatever. And I would just never do it. And then I remember one day my older brother came over and he went there and he was just smacking through it. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was like, how is he doing this? But I think he didn't save or something didn't save. I don't know. I never got back there, but I never tried it again. It's too much. Anything that posed even the slightest challenge, I wasn't with it.
Do you remember Diddy Kong Racing at all?
Vaguely, yeah. I think I had it. I don't think I played it too much.
I feel like that's a game you would just get me to try random games, but the only ones I were really fucking with were Mario Party and Stadium.
I mean, I can't blame you.
Yeah, and what was I gonna say? You were hell bent on trying to get me into Pokemon. So I remember you gave me you put Pokemon Snap in for me. And I was like, nigga, this is worse. I was like, this is worse. This is just taking pictures. I was like, you're not selling me on this shit.
That's funny because I remember loving Pokemon Snap back in the day. And then fast forward to a couple months ago, Hope surprised me and she's like, hey, look, I know you were talking about it. I bought you the new one on Switch. And I was like, oh, cool. This is amazing. I played through the whole fucking game and I was like, yeah, okay, now what? This has no substance.
No, that's what a lot of people were saying. They're like, niggas were asking for that for years. A second one, and they finally do it. I hear no one talk about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was good, for what it was. But, it's like I said, it's just taking pictures. It's what are you gonna do? Right. Go through the track again? Try to get a better picture of the Quagsire or fucking iPod or whatever?
I ended up playing the original once, when I was older, on the Wii, on the virtual console. I liked it. It was fine, but as a kid, I definitely was not playing that shit.
Back then, it was funny because you could throw the gas balls or whatever to piss the Pokemon off. They don't have that in the new one.
Yeah, but that probably has like implications that they're like, it was not.
Yeah, it's like use or whatever.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other notable games, or do you want to move on?
I know Pokemon Snap was definitely up there. I had Mario 64. I didn't play a lot of it because that was another hard ass game.
You just reminded me of another story I don't even have written down. You would not let me play that game because it was rated K to A. So in your head, you just thought that meant, oh, you have to be like a big kid. So like not a teen, but like not a baby. So like 5, because 5 is considered the like non-toddler, like you're finally like a grade school. So you're like, nah, you can't play this. You can play this when you're 5. And I wanted to play that shit so bad because it looked cool. It's like the N64 game, you know.
Nah, but my thing is, I was a great fuck, honestly.
Yeah, you were just making rules just to make them.
Yeah, if it was too fun, I wanted to play it for myself. I didn't want you to play it and get better than me.
But like, I wasn't around in the 90s, so I don't know. But K to A was literally, they turned that into E for everyone. Like, it's the same shit. So
yeah, who cares?
Stadium is E for everyone. Mario's K to A. That's the same shit. But you just wanted to be a dickhead. So you're like, nah, you can't play this.
It'd be like that. I had to go through some character development.
Growing up, though, there were only 2 games other than the aforementioned Pokemon Stadium and Mario Party that I remember playing a decent amount of. First of the 2 being Mario Kart 64. Now, unfortunately, I'm not as attached to this game as many others are. I just remember this being the go-to multiplayer game besides Mario Party. This game also showed me that the Mario series is very flexible. Like, this Mario guy can be in pretty much any game genre he wants to be in. The only major things I remember from playing this game is that everybody wanted to be Toad, and that I liked battle mode way more. Mario Kart is another series that I grew up playing, so I will touch on some of the future entries in later videos. Now, the other multiplayer game I remember being popular on the console is a game that I thought nothing of as a little baby, but went on to become one of my favorite series of all time, as well as having a huge impact on me way later in life. Super Smash Bros. Or Smash 64 is a game that most kids in the 90s would have foamed over the mouth about just thinking about the concept. But me and Tiandro seemed to not really understand at the time. It's a crossover fighting game with Nintendo's most popular characters at the time. And from what I can tell, Nintendo was literally the only thing we knew about video game-wise. Now, to jump the gun a bit, I played very little of this game as a little boy. Less than Mario Kart 64 even. At the time, the only characters I recognized were Mario and Luigi, Donkey Kong, Yoshi, Kirby, and the Pokemon. I didn't understand what the percentages meant, if the number being high was good or bad, and after playing it again recently, yeah, there's no fucking way I would have figured out the controls at the time. And part of me feels like T also had no idea what he was doing. I remember us not knowing. I was like, Tiandra, like, is the number going up? Is that good or bad? You're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. Nobody explained that to me. Nobody, because I was used to shit like Pokemon, where like the number starts high. If I have 100 HP, you smack me in the head, I go down to 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the number's going up. Yeah, I can see how that would confuse the fuck out of us. And it would go above 100 too. That's like, super confusing.
I'm like, what is 105%? What the heck? I thought 100% is the whole thing. That's what I learned in school.
So yeah, this game didn't really mean all that much to me at a young age. So why am I focusing on it right now? Well, way later, maybe about 8 years later, I would end up playing the shit out of this game on the Wii via the Virtual Console. Around the time I got a Wii, the idea of retro gaming piqued my interest a lot. Scrolling to the Wii Shop channel and seeing all the N64 games was so fascinating. Hey, I remember playing some of these games as a kid. I could finally own some of these for myself. I didn't have Super Smash Bros. Brawl at the time, so the next best thing was Smash 64. So for my younger brother Aiden's birthday in 2011 or so, I convinced my aunt to buy him Smash 64. On my Wii. I would get Brawl later that Christmas, but for the time before then, it was all Smash 64 with me and my brother. I remember visiting our dad all the way in Cape Verde with a very limited game library, so one of our most played games was Smash 64. Now there are some other games that I got off the Wii Shop channel, and there are some other games I played a shit ton of in Cape Verde. But since Smash 64 did interest me a little bit, even at a young age, I felt it would be appropriate to talk about it now with the other N64 games.
Wait, when did we get it?
Oh, I didn't even... Do you remember how we got it?
I just remember that we kept asking people to buy for us and no one would buy it. And fucking...
But it was your birthday and we got her to buy it for you, but it was on my Wii.
Did we get Brawl yet, or were we too poor to get Brawl?
We didn't have Brawl yet.
Yeah, we didn't have Brawl, so we were trying to get Smash 64.
Wait, so did you actually want that shit? Because I low-key feel like
I just thought it was Smash Bros, and I thought it was going to be good like fucking cool because it was Smash Bros.
I mean,
Then I realized it was a Nintendo 64 game.
yeah,
I didn't really care because it was Smash Bros. But
yeah, it was on my Wii, but we said that it was your birthday present, so I mean, I guess you did want it, otherwise you wouldn't have done that. But I always,
yeah,
in the back of my head, I always imagined it as me just fucking robbing you of a birthday present, basically. But whatever.
no, it was fine though. I just liked it because you just basically gassed it up the entire time saying it was like a Nintendo crossover and shit. So like I just wanted to play either way. I didn't really care about graphics back then because like I was like fucking I don't even know.
You were
Maybe 6 of them.
You were 5. You were 5, or you were. It was your
5. But like,
it was your 5th birthday is when you got it.
yeah, Smash 64 and Smash Bros probably look the same to me, honestly.
Yeah, I think you played Brawl for like a split second, like before that when you were like younger, but that was your first like real Smash game. So just seeing the roster back then was so weird to me. Like, what game is this supposed to be? Why is Pikachu fighting Donkey Kong? Why can Jigglypuff square up with this weird space guy? And the funniest part is, I wouldn't even have known the characters I did know if it wasn't for Tiandrew. He's the one that introduced me to the games and these characters. And even though I myself didn't play it a lot back then, T and some other people we knew seemed to have lots of fun with it. Fast forward to when I'm 11, and I'm aware of all of these characters and all of their history. They're playing this game both with N64 controls and using a GameCube controller on the Wii. I can say for sure that this game is still a fun time when you understand the controls. On the Wii, they made the game play similarly to Melee and Brawl, but on the N64, the controls don't feel as responsive, and a little bit janky. If I had to decide who my main was in this game, I played a lot of Kirby, Pikachu, and Jigglypuff. Now, they are some of the better characters in the game, with Pikachu and Kirby actually being the uncontested 2 best characters in the game. But obviously, I wouldn't know that back then. They were just the characters I probably knew the best at the time. I truly couldn't appreciate the crossover aspect of this game at all back on the N64 due to not even knowing most of the source material. Like, what is a Planet Zebes or a Sector Z? Again, if it wasn't for T's Pokemon obsession and the other games he got me into, this would have been a complete mindfuck instead of just a slight mindfuck. Nowadays, I've played a good amount of games that all these characters are from, and if it wasn't for the series as a whole, I wouldn't have gotten into some of my favorite series of all time, such as Fire Emblem and Earthbound. Every subsequent Smash game would go on to be my most played game on each Nintendo console. But that will come up way later on. So now, this game didn't really have as big of an impact as the other games I played on the N64, but young me would have no idea how important this game ended up being to me in the grand scheme of things. Up to this point, it's been N64, N64, N64. But honestly, I think that does it for the most notable games I played on the N64. Now, there are some N64 games that I'll talk about in future episodes, but for the time being, we're all set on that. There was one other gaming system that Tiandrew had that he would let me play sometimes, and that was the Game Boy Advance. Now, unlike the N64, the GBA was a currently supported gaming console at the time. He had a good amount of GBA games too, some of which probably being Pokemon, but since I wasn't too into that series at the time, there were few options as far as GBA games go. I know you had like Pokemon games and like shit like that, but more specifically during like that early age, back at your old house when we were like really young, what other GBA games did you have?
Mario Party Advance, I played the shit out of that game. I don't know. I don't think I really had a lot besides Pokemon games.
I assumed, because I have a good memory and I only remember those games.
Yeah, 'cause I remember I had pretty much every Pokemon game. I think I've owned at least one game from every... Actually, hold on. I think I've owned at least 2 games from every generation, actually, except this new one. And the last one, actually. I never got shit.
Right. I remember... yeah, Gen 1. Fuck Gen 1.
Also, real quick, I did just remember one other GBA game I played the shit out of. I don't remember which one it was, but it was Yu-Gi-Oh!
As soon as you said that, I remember that. I remember you playing that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was always that one. It was like, I was never getting into that shit. Nowadays, I'm like kind of interested in like the show at least, but when I was a kid, I was not. I was already not fucking with Pokemon, and then you were like, yeah, let's play Yu-Gi-Oh! I was like, nah.
Yeah, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like 3 times more complicated.
And it's like more like adult, but more.
Yeah, it's like you gotta read, you gotta know the numbers, do math.
Definitely harder. But yeah, I remember you playing that.
Yeah, that game was always fun. Nowadays, I remember the anime was kind of like once it hit like 5Ds, I kind of fell off.
Mm-hmm.
But like the games I still played for years. I had one of them on the PS4. I don't remember which one it was. Legacy of the Duelist, I think. I don't know, it was really fun.
However, there was one game that he personally thought I would like a lot, and that game was Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. I don't recall whether or not I played this game before Smash 64 or after, but regardless, Kirby being in Smash showed me that he was important in some way. Looking back on it now, this game was one of the most perfect games Tiandro could have possibly gotten me to play at that young age. The whole point of Kirby as a series is being a great introduction to platformers and video games as a whole. Just looking at the game is enough to tell you that this could be for the younger crowd. Like, this shit was literally perfect for a kid my age. Nightmare in Dreamland is a remake of Kirby's Adventure on the NES, the first Kirby game in terms of the main gimmick in the series, the copy ability. Nowadays, I see this game as the most Kirby game of all Kirby games, as other entries typically have another gimmick on top of the copy abilities, as well as this game just not having too much substance to it. But that was even better for me. I can just run around, fly infinitely if I was having trouble with the enemies or whatever, and I could experiment with a plethora of copy abilities and see which one I liked best. It was perfect timing too, as around the time I played this game, I would catch the anime on TV from time to time. There weren't too many video game to show adaptations on TV at the time, so seeing Kirby on TV made me want to use him in a game even more. So, I think before I got into Kirby, I would see the only video game like adaptations I used to see on TV, the big three were Pokemon, obviously. And then for kids, every once in a while, I would see Sonic X and Kirby. And Sonic X, Sonic is kind of the same as Pokemon. Before I really got into it, I would like look at it and be like, what the fuck is this? It looks so weird. So I just ignored it. But one time Kirby came on, and I was like really young, and I was like, oh, what the hell is this? This is like, it actually interested me. It was like the opposite of Sonic and Pokemon. I was like, wait, no, this actually looks cool. I like this. And then, I think that was before, or it was either before or after you got me playing Nightmare in Dreamland. That show, I think, is one of the only like pieces of media, at least as a kid, to make me cry.
Really?
Because the whole gimmick with the show was Dedede would like call for monsters to like come kill Kirby. And I remember seeing this episode before like I played the game, where I was like really young. I don't remember the timeline. And I was like, oh man, the snowman's trying to kill Kirby. What the fuck? But then Kirby's like, he's Kirby, so he's like, oh no, you're my friend. I don't want to, like, I love you. So then at the end of the episode, they like, all the snow goes away. Because they beat the monster or whatever. And then Chili, like, there's no more snow, so the snowman's like dying. It's like the little ice enemy, like the little snowman guy.
Yeah.
So all the snow's gone, so the nigga's literally dying. Like, he's like melting, he's like shrinking. And I was like, what the fuck? No! So what they do is Kirby like runs to like a cliff that has like ice on it, like an icicle or something. And he like takes his hat, because he's like small, so the hat doesn't fit him anymore. So he puts the hat like over him, and then he like leaves. He's like, alright, yo, like I'm like bye. And it's like playing like the music and shit, and like it's so sad. And then later, it cuts to, I'm like 5, bro. It like cuts to like, not him drowning, but like the icicle melts because it's in the water, and then the fucker just, he's dead. He died. He like straight up died, and it shows his like neck, it shows his like bell and his like hat like sinking underwater. I'm like, what the fuck?
That's like unnecessarily sad.
Yeah, literally. And I remember as a kid, like if a clip or something like made me feel a certain way, I would just keep rewinding it like, over and over again to see it. And I think I rewinded it enough to the point where I just cried. It like made me cry. Oh. Yeah, look at this shit. He's like waving by, like puts the shit over him. And this nigga was trying to kill Kirby the whole episode. You don't understand. And Kirby was the only one, like, everyone was like, Kirby, that nigga's trying to kill you. Like, you need to, like, stop trusting people. And then he, like...
Kirby was just that guy.
Yeah, and then this shit happens. Like, nigga, what?!
It's just so sad.
Eventually, I ended up getting my own Game Boy Advance later on, and T let me borrow this game as I didn't have much games to play on it. We would see each other later that day, and I was on World 7. This game isn't hard whatsoever, but making it this far was still cool to me. We ended up beating the final boss, and I was ecstatic. I don't know if I have the timeline correct or not, but this could very well be the first game I've ever beaten. I mean, it is the first single-player game I have ever played, so that would make sense. This game does have a multiplayer mode, but growing up, nobody I knew had a link cable, so that was never a possibility. What were your thoughts as Kirby in general, as a kid? Like, were you, like, because the whole thing with Nightmare in Dreamland is, like, usually, yeah, like we were talking about earlier, you were, like, a little stingy kid, like, you didn't want me playing certain shit. But you specifically got me into Kirby. Like, you were like, yo, play this. This is, like, a perfect game for you to play, like, this baby-ass game.
I mean, yeah, because, I don't know, I didn't see Kirby as, like, a hard game, really. Like, I mean, with that being said, Nightmare in Dreamland, it took me like so fucking long to beat, probably like months, maybe a year, I don't fucking know. But like, I don't know. it was definitely a game. It didn't feel like it was very punishing. Like if you die, you don't start the whole level over. You just start over from like the last door you entered, or whatever.
Right. I think it's
So like if I walk into a boss and I have like 1 health left, I'll just die on purpose. Start the boss over again at full health.
I mean, that's pretty smart for a kid.
Yeah, no. Now I think it's a little like this game specifically, Nightmare and Dreamland specifically. Like I definitely think that game was definitely better for kid you.
No, it was like
I still
perfect.
agree with old me.
I'd say the only part as a kid that like we didn't really think too much about was since the game we didn't like the bosses, like we could just beat them by just hitting them, but there are like patterns, and I don't think we like cared to like learn them. We just wanted to fuck them up. No. So that's where the only difficulty of the game came from, just being patient. Other than seeing the show on 4Kids a lot, this was my only exposure to Kirby really, outside of Smash Bros. It wouldn't be until 3rd grade or so where I would own my own Kirby game. Kirby has always been one of the more slept on Nintendo series and characters, especially back then. But from this moment forward, he was always my favorite in terms of Nintendo characters and games. The only other GBA game I remember playing from Tiandro's library was Yoshi's Island. I didn't play it nearly as much as Kirby, but I remember playing a bit of it. Maybe it was because I didn't really care about Yoshi as a kid. There was definitely no Kirby or Mario, so the game seemed like a waste of time to little old me. Also, having to deal with Baby Mario was too stressful for a kid like me. Like, I'm basically a baby, I don't want to deal with this shit. Although the one thing this game did teach me is the basic function of buttons. Without asking T, I remember already knowing what each button does. A for jumping, and B for whatever action Yoshi or whatever character I'm using in a game has. I remember T being so confused as to why I already knew how to eat things with Yoshi. But I mean, Kirby eats with B, so why not Yoshi? So you got me to play, you were like, oh, play my Game Boy, play Kirby. And I was like, oh, do you have any other games? You're like, oh, here's Yoshi's Island. And you were like, Yoshi's Island taught me the basic, like, understanding which button does what. Basically, because I remember you were like, do you know what the A button does? And I'm like, well, jump, I assume, because it's the A button. And you're like, oh yeah, do you know how to like eat people? I was like, B. And you're like, what the fuck, how do you know that? I'm like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I guess it could have been L and R, but
yeah, there's 4 buttons, so there's only so many controls.
As a kid, I was like, well, I assume the attack button in whatever game I'm playing would be B, and whatever jump A. So that's why old ass games confuse the fuck out of me, like Super Nintendo type shit. Cause actually I got the controllers right here, so this is perfect. Cause with the like Sony and the like Xbox layout, it's the same layout, but these buttons like do the same shit, But Nintendo is fucking Nintendo, so you would think like B would be like the same as X, but they're like, nah, A. So old ass games, I would try pressing A to jump and nothing would happen, like Mario World or whatever, but it's actually B because it's on the bottom. And I just confused the fuck out of me. Especially because Xbox and Nintendo have the same letters, so it just threw me off.
It's funny because it still fucking confuses me because I'll go from like playing like Smash with the Pro Controller to playing like literally anything on my PlayStation. I'll get confused because A and B are flipped to where X and circle are.
Yeah, that shit always like caught me off guard as a kid. And also, just like a side note, let's backtrack for a bit. Like, was this ever like confusing to you as a kid?
Absolutely.
Like this shit, this like Mickey Mouse controller, this like fucking spaceship, like.
I didn't know how the fuck to hold it, how to press all the buttons. Some games use the yellow buttons, some games use the D-pad. I don't know if any game used both. Also, that would be a good time to mention that I actually have an amazing memory. Most people probably couldn't think this far back, but I kind of trained myself at a young age to remember most of what goes on around me. This is how I can recall all of these stories and most, if not all, of the games I grew up playing. Speaking of which, it's time for a new console, or rather, a new company. Alongside Nintendo, I would end up growing up with PlayStation. My dad didn't seem too much into video games, but he did own a PlayStation 2, a console most people I knew had at the time. My dad pretty much only played SOCOM, an online shooter. I didn't have much interest in a game like that, cause I was 4, so the PS2 never interested me. There was one game I remember playing a decent amount of at some family member's house though, and that's Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. This is a game I feel like a lot of people played during their childhoods, but did not make it that far, or cared enough to keep playing. This is one of the most nostalgic games though.
I'm sure if I played the first hour or so of this game again, it would send me straight back to 2004 or whatever year it was when I first played this. Now, unfortunately, number 1, I didn't make it that far at all as a kid. Number 2, this is the only Spyro game I have ever played. And number 3, this game is apparently super duper dog shit. I wouldn't know, obviously, since I had no concept of good or bad games, just games I liked and games I didn't like. But as far as my undeveloped brain memories go, I like this game just fine. Maybe I should play it again just to see for myself. Now, Spyro was just a game my dad just so happened to have that he gave to me to play on his PS2. Since the console wasn't mine, yet, and the only other games I have played up to this point were at other people's houses, I still have not had a console to call my own. This was until 2004. It might have been a late birthday present or something, but one day my mom took me to the store and we picked up my first ever console, a PlayStation 1. Maybe it was because it was cheap at the time, or maybe it was because my dad already had a PS2, but I had a PS1. I had the PS1 model, which is kind of a precursor to the Slim model Sony would do later. I was excited to have a system to call my own. And most of you are probably thinking, man, a PS1? There are so many possibilities for childhood memories to be made with the expansive library. Crash Bandicoot? A Mega Man game? Klonoa? An actual good Spyro game? Unfortunately, this would not be the case. The games I ended up getting were not the best, to say the least. Maybe there were only C-tier games in the store we went to, or maybe my mom just didn't know what games were good. She was never into video games. In fact, she would go on to hate them. But regardless, I was happy to have my own system. Now, I had 2 games. Only 2 games. Yeah, maybe it's because I didn't play the PS1 that much, considering how meh the games I had were, but I never ended up getting more than 2 PS1 games. At least not as a kid. So what were the 2 games? Well, one of them was James Bond 007 Tomorrow Never Dies. Kind of a weird game to buy for a 4-year-old, but I digress. I really don't have much to say about this game, seeing as I didn't play this nearly as much as the other game I had. All I remember from Tomorrow Never Dies is the opening, a weird purplish open space for the first level, and that literally everyone else that I lived with played this game way more than I did. My cousins, my mom's cousins, they were way more interested in this game than I was. Maybe that's the reason she got it for me? For other people to use it too, I guess? I don't know. I was way more interested and hooked on the other game my mom got for me, Elmo's Number Journey. Yes, the first 2 games I ever owned were a James Bond game and a Sesame Street game. Being the little kid I was, of course I loved Sesame Street. I loved TV in general. I loved PBS Kids and the shows they had on there. Clifford, Dragon Tales, Teletubbies, etc. Apparently when I was a baby, I would cry when Barney was over, or when Noggin changed to the N. Yeah, who remembers that? Holy shit. As I'm running part of this video, a memory of me owning an Elmo's World DVD or VHS, I don't remember, came flowing back into my head. I might have even had an Elmo toy. Can't really remember. What I do remember is I played this game a good amount as a jit. More than Yoshi's Island, more than Mario Kart 64, and yes, more than Super Smash Bros. Insane. Before I actually talk about the game, can I just say, even though I barely played my PS1, this shit is still so nostalgic. Probably the most nostalgia I have for a console. The startup music. The weird CD menu. Dude, I literally got some weird-ass Mozart music CD for Christmas once, and I would put it in my PS1 thinking it was a game. And I would be so confused as to what the hell I'm looking at. And the same with James Bond, the opening for this dumbass Elmo game is still super nostalgic to me. Now, I am currently 23. I first played this game 19 years ago when I was 4. Now, obviously one can infer that my experiences with this game as a preschooler would of course not be able to be replicated as an adult. However, upon replaying this game for the first time in 19 years for this video, wow. It's a Sesame Street game, yes. It's a game that helps with numbers and math, yes. It's an early childhood game, yes. In fact, it's the only early childhood rated game I have probably ever played. But wow. So the game follows popular children's character Elmo as he goes on a quest for numbers. The game has 3 difficulties and 3 levels. The difficulty only determines how many numbers you have to get per stage. Now to be real for a minute, I was a smart-ass kid. For a 4-year-old. I knew very basic math before kindergarten, I learned how to talk in complete sentences and knew bigger words than other kids my age, and again, my memory was really good. But you know, even though those were some skills I had, there were other things, other basic things I feel like I was really fucking bad at. While I was playing this game and getting footage for this video, I couldn't shake the feeling that I definitely did not play this game right as a kid. Something I know I was bad at was following directions. So when Elmo tells me to click the number 4, I probably started to fuck around and just took any number I wanted. Now that I think about it, I probably didn't even see this as an educational game. I probably thought this was on par with the N64 games I played and thought this was an amazing AAA Elmo experience. Like, bro, look at the fucking case. My older cousins would definitely tell me this was a baby game, but that definitely made me cope even more. Speaking of cousins, I remember them wanting to influence what levels they wanted me to do. My older cousin from my mom's side, Anthony, would want me to go to the Count's level, and his sister would want me to go to Ernie's level. Now, me not wanting to pick sides, as the responsible and respectful 4-year-old I am, decided to please everyone by picking neither. I picked Cookie Monster's level instead, which was a fucking chocolate jet ski level. Yes! This is so fire! What kid wouldn't want to play a vehicular level like this? Oh, it controls like shit. Not that 4-year-old me cared. Look at the damn cookies! Now, I remember clearly that there was actually a 4th level by Big Bird. I thought I was a fucking genius knowing that there was a level not listed on the menu. Well, number 1, Big Bird has nothing to do with the level. And 2, this is the tutorial. Again, I did not follow directions because I thought I was that guy, apparently. But Elmo talking to me did not matter. I thought I found a secret level that looked no different from the first part of the Count's level. You know how I know I didn't play this baby game correctly as a kid? I do not remember this math section at all. You get here once you collect all the numbers you need in a level. We can deduce from this that young Ty never got all the numbers he needed to, at least not the correct ones. And that's the whole game. There's no ending, it's just replaying the same 3 levels, and when you're done, you're booted back to the hub. This game is obviously shit, but hey, being the target demographic of this game back then, I liked it enough, even without playing it correctly. Now, my PS1 days did not last long. Like I said before, Elmo and James Bond were the only 2 games I owned as a kid. I did end up buying a different PS1 in high school, this time being the original model. I have no idea what happened to my original PS1, probably in some storage in my grandma's house somewhere. I remember seeing it around my grandma's house from time to time as I grew up in that house for most of my life. That and Anthony's Dreamcast. Really wish we still had our old consoles. It would be cool to hold on to that piece of history. However, I wouldn't have to wait long for my next console. That's for my 5th birthday in 2005. I would receive my favorite console to this day. But that will be the main talking point in the next episode of this series.
Join in too.
Wubba, 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 wubba. Yes, if you wubba me, then I will wubba you. If you wubba me, then I will wubba you.
Yes, if you